everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the CEO and founder of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended Pledge, and the host of the Blended Podcast. Now, I'm super excited to be here with you today. As you can see, I'm not in my home office. I am here in New Orleans for the Break Bulk and Project Cargo Conference with the Journal of Commerce. And later today, I'm going to be filming live at Break Bulk, which is going to be a lot of fun. Now, I'm sorry that we missed you last week. Last week, I was in Atlanta for Modex. This past weekend, I was in LA for a think tank, and now I'm in New Orleans. Next week, we've got DC, who's going to be hosting Thoughts and Coffee right before the Supply Chain Day, the National Supply Chain Day gala that she's putting on in Atlanta, and I can't wait for you to hear more about that. But we've got an exciting show for you today. We've got Ilhan from Avero 360, and we're going to be talking all about AI. We're going to be talking about data confidence. We're also going to be talking about bourbon at the end of the show. So if you're a bourbon drinker, you like some old fashioned, stay tuned till the end of the show. Now, I want to give a shout out to the Secret Society of Supply Chain. We are growing quickly. If you have not joined us yet, head over to secretsocietyofsupplychain.com. I want to give a quick shout out. I'm only going to do first names only because we have completely smashed our numbers for this month. I want to give a shout out to some of our newest members: Scott, Bo, Mark, Michael, Pankaj, Stephanie, Mike, Charles, Masood, Chris, Tomas, Dinesh, Martina, Thomas, Vishes, Smitha, Zach, Rachel. Who else have we got here? Ruthel, Zach, we've got Gary, Chris, Lorna, AJ Powell, John, Simon, Tony, Oscar, Candy, Casey, or Cassie, sorry, Lisa, McKinley, Chris, Milan, Jessica, Randy, Roxy, James, Lisa, Mike, JR, Olivier, and Alexandra. Thank you so much for joining us over at the Secret Society of Supply Chain. We've got some great conversations happening over there. So if you haven't signed up, we've put the link in the comments. We'd love to see you over there. All right, let's talk about what's happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we've got a couple of brand new episodes. Now, these episodes we filmed, at Manifest. This one is with Bill Catania of One Realm. We're talking about discover why visibility isn't fixing the last mile. And this is a great discussion. If you've ever listened or watched any of the episodes that I've done with Bill in the past, he is a wealth of knowledge and information. And so I highly recommend you go and check this out wherever you listen and watch the show. It's episode 540. And then we've got another episode 539. We also recorded this one on site at Manifest in the ShipStation booth with DHL Express. And we're talking about how they're collaborating. Now, you all know that I say collaboration is the future of business. This episode shows how ShipStation and DHL come together for modern commerce. What does that mean to you? Well, it could mean the difference of how your product is delivered to your customer and whether they buy from you again. So go check that out. It's episode 539. And then we've got another episode filmed at Manifest with Deliver Direct and Smart Cargo. Now, you might be wondering what Delta has to do with this, because Delta Cargo was part of this episode, and they've partnered with Deliver Direct and Smart Cargo for last mile delivery. If you haven't checked this out, go and check it out. Listen and watch the episode 538. You can grab it on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Check it out. Listen to what they have to say. They've definitely taken what's happened in last mile delivery and they are turning it on its head. So go check that out. Highly, highly recommend that one. And then live tomorrow at 2 p.m., Chris Hamley is back for Performance Paradox. Now they're going to be talking about behind closed doors automation projects. They are going to uncover what is happening behind closed doors. Now this has to do with the episode that we recorded a couple of weeks ago as well. So if you didn't check that one out, go to letstalksupplychain.com, grab that episode, listen to it. We also have buttons where you can get an executive summary for the episode. So go check it out before tomorrow and join us live. Click the attend button, even if you can't attend live, and we'll send you the recording. And then on Friday, Eric Johnson is going to be live at 10 a.m. Eastern. If you missed his last show, he wasn't hosting that show. David Warwick hosted that show, and myself and Paula from Google were guests on that one. If you missed it, go and check it out on our playlist on the Let's Talk Supply Chain YouTube. It was a really, really fun conversation. We talked about the partnership between Let's Talk Supply Chain and Google. And on Friday, he's going to be talking about importers. This is your wake-up call, new tariffs, new risks. Of course, the portal was open yesterday. So everybody is rushing to do refunds right now. I think we'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you are, how's that going? But definitely click the attend button and go and check that out. Last but not least, where are we going to be in person? Well, right now, I'm at Breakbulk and Project Cargo. That's happening in New Orleans. And we've got, just getting through all of this, April 29th, I'm going to be back in Atlanta for the National Supply Chain Day Gala. Can't wait to be there with DC, New Gen Architects, and so many more. I just found out this event is sold out. So if you didn't get your ticket, I'm not sure there's any left and available. We've also got Gartner happening May 4th through 6th. Alicia from my team is going to be there, so make sure that you go and say hi. We've got Home Delivery World happening May 20th through 21st in Nashville. We're going to be recording podcasts on site there as well. So if you see us, come and say hi. Well, that was a lot. And now it's time to bring up our guest for the show. Remember, if you are listening or watching, I want to know where you're tuning in from. So make sure to put that in the comments. We also love a good fire emoji. So if you love the conversation today, we want to see some fire emojis in the comments as well. Good morning, Ilhan. How are you?
Morning. Really good. How about yourself?
Good. I'm in New Orleans. You're in Chicago. I mean, it's so amazing how we can do these shows virtually and kind of from anywhere in the world.
Yep, certainly a pleasure.
I love that. All right. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell everybody who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your company.
Of course. Yeah, my name is Ilhan. I've been running Avira 360 for a little more than a year now. And Avira 360 is a hardware-enabled AI software company, and we focus on real-time yard visibility, gate automation, and perimeter security.
Awesome. I love that. Now, as always, we've got a QR code in the top right-hand corner. That's going to take you to their yard visibility snapshot. So if you have any questions about your yard, go and take that quick assessment. It'll show you where you are and what you need to be thinking about. So definitely go and check out, click on that QR code. Now, I want to get to the poll of the week, and we've got a whole bunch of people coming in and telling us where they're tuning in from, and I'll get to that in just a second. But I want to get to the poll of the week. Now, we ask everybody a question every single Wednesday morning. The question is, where do you lose the most time in your operation? Now, we had 64 votes on this one. 55% of you said fixing bad information. Now, this is one of the areas that we're going to be sticking to and talking about a little bit later on today. 25% said finding assets inventory. 20% said waiting at handoffs. Ilhan, what do you think of the results of this poll? I don't know if it's surprising for me.
No, I mean, this makes a lot of sense, right? Like, and what we see is that all these challenges, none of them show up in isolation. Everything compounds. Every little mistake, every missed signal, every inaccuracy in the data collection and the data capture. We call this yard blindness. So, and it shows up, it happens when operators don't trust their data to reflect the real-time reality at the yard. We see that it happens at the gate. Uncertainty around who enters, who exits, what asset it was, when it happened, or whether the move was properly authorized or not. And then when the assets are inside the yard, we see that there's uncertainty around where they're physically located, whether they're ready to move, how long they've been sitting. So it's just the biggest gap is between what the system says and what is actually happening out there. And I think this could have a compounding effect across the entire supply chain. So we always say that the better visibility will lead to better decisions. It's not about the data. It's the data that actually turns into information the most proper way possible.
Well, and the 55% at fixing bad information, I almost wonder if it's because we ran into AI. without really fixing the data problem and the data foundation of the information that's being ingested. Because I'll tell you, I have been really working with my team and empowering them to really set up environments and figure out what information we need in there and how we're going to do that. And I was talking to a VP of supply chain the other day, and they said, we are creating our own foundation for AI before we even look at any technology that can help us in that realm, because we want to make sure that A, it's the right information, and B, we want to control the information that's going to be ingested into these systems. Yeah. So the 55% doesn't surprise me. What surprises me is just, I wonder if we ran too fast.
Yes, sometimes, and I think here's our approach with the whole thing as well too. So we apply AI on the data capture side of things. Like, so we have this video language action model that is focused at capturing the data in the highest accuracy possible. So you can get to, with computer vision AI combinations, for instance, could get you to 99.9999% accuracy, which will help you get the data so that you can apply it on your workflows, your processes. But coming back to your point too, if you don't have the proper process, if you don't have the measures or the resources to engineer your process, that data is not going to get translated into information anyway. So there isn't, I think, across the supply chain, across this value chain, I think the application of AI at the right place, when combined with process engineering, that's when we can find some true solutions.
Well, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later on in the show, because data confidence is a big, big, big challenge right now. But before we do that, I want to get into the market update. So you and I recorded an episode at Manifest. It's coming out in just a little bit. So stay tuned and make sure that you're following the Let's Talk Supply Chain page, because we want you to see it when it comes out. And you're going to learn a little bit more about Ilhan, his company, what they can do, yard blindness. We're going to talk a little bit about it today, but we go into way more depth in that episode. So stay tuned for that. But I want to ask you about a market update. Like, what is happening in the industry right now? What are you talking to customers? What's the sentiment? How are people feeling about supply chain technology, et cetera, et cetera?
So in general, I think all the operators are navigating a pretty tight equation, right? So the volumes are uneven. I wouldn't say things are collapsing, not at all, but predictability has been very difficult, right? And there are some trends that are not temporary. I think especially the cost side of things that have been structurally elevated. It's not a temporary thing. So what we're seeing from our customers, the prospects we talk to, when we go to the yards, the physical side of things, I think there's a strong shift toward ROI-backed investments only. So, if you can't tie your solution, your product, to increased throughput, labor efficiency, better asset utilization, you will get deprioritized. So this means, like, it doesn't mean innovation is not going to happen. I think there are still different ways and methods. I think we're going to talk some of them about them today too. You can still innovate, but it needs to be tied to ROI very, very strongly. So and this gap, as the Paul said too, as we started the conversation with as well too, that physical reality gap is real, and a lot of time and effort is now being lost in the operations to mitigate for it. So we all know that our supply chain processes, workflows are always very dynamic. It is bound to create friction. So all of that, I think, adds up to these uneven state of the market right now. So I think we need, innovative solutions, innovative products more than ever.
Well, and that takes me into my first article, because I want to talk about that. ISM put out this particular article. It was back in February, and they were talking about procurement priorities. They were talking about how leaders are having pressure to they're going from experimenting to deploying AI at scale. And they're having pressure around that. And I think one of the two priorities that they were talking about was, how do we support our leaders in that? And number two, how do we achieve enterprise goals with less? So the pressure is real. The pressure to
Yeah.
use AI, and it's not just at the enterprise level. I mean, I'm a small business, and even I'm looking at it and creating some pressure, empowering at the same time, but also creating some pressure around it because we know what we can do with it, and we need to look at achieving those goals with less, which I do agree with that. Talk to me about what you thought about this particular article, and then I'll go into a little bit more.
Yeah, spot on. I think the way you summarized it, like all the teams across enterprises, not only just the supply chain teams, are under like real pressure to do the same or more with fewer resources. So you have to not only keep up with the volume, all the expectations, the variability, but you just have to get creative around that as well too. And as I mentioned earlier too, I don't think this is a temporary thing. This is also structural as well too. So everyone is being pulled into different directions all at once, and you got these rising risk with the operational difficulties. You got this rising risk with, like, in our world, like what, for instance, with cargo theft, security related challenges we've had over the last couple of years as well too. And the way that I see this is when it comes to procurement, like the winners are the ones who can modernize while staying reliable throughout the process. It's the balance of how you can make these improvements in your process, make your improvements in your technology stack, modernize your processes, modernize the way that you operate,
Right.
And improve the visibility and execution without adding complexity. Right? We've seen. They've been around a lot of projects throughout careers where, like, oh, we have to re-platform, we have to do this from scratch. But I think the approach has been more, okay, we have to do more with less. Let's get more creative. Let's get, let's tie this into core business values where, procurement is really tied to a certain ROI model. So the way that I see this is that AI is now not experimental anymore. We have to deliver business value, tangible results almost immediately, so we can respond to this immediate need.
Yeah, number 4 on their list was talking about transforming operating models, re-architecturing human capital, process tech, and data infrastructure. And it's so interesting because I feel like those who have already done that may have to go and revisit and do it all over again. And we're going to have to, I think, get used to that because there's so much changing so quickly. I think it's going to happen over and over again. I want to encourage everybody who's watching, if you're loving the conversation, give us a fire emoji. But also, if you have any questions, please put those in the comments. I had a question earlier from Jazz that I want to highlight and ask you, Ilhan. They said, by the way, what is the one visibility gap you see most consistently across operations today? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but because we're talking about transforming operating models and that being number 4 on the list, what do you think about that?
It's the yard inventory. So where assets are parked, how they moved around the facility. So when it's time to load, unload, pick these assets up, I think the life cycle is really lacking that real life input from the yard, and that's what we've been fixated on fixing, I would say. So knowing where things are at, and you cannot. It's a little cliche. You can't manage what you cannot see. But I think that the yard, that actual biggest blindness is where things are at my yard, and how did I end up there? Could I position them in better places to actually increase my throughput? This is the biggest problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah, and I think we're also going to talk about that with the next article too, because there's a big gap around data, and we're gonna talk about that. One of the other things that I wanted to bring up within this is, I think there's a couple of things that we have to think about when it comes to our organizations and AI. This is something as a small business I've been doing, and I'm actually looking into right now, and it's an AI playbook. I think there's a lot of tools out there, and there's a lot of organization environments. There's also personal environments. Personally, we're, getting into LLMs and things like that. And I think we need to be a little bit careful. I think we need to provide a playbook to the teams as to what's okay, what's not okay, what's okay to do in a personal LLM versus what has to stay in a corporate environment. And so for me, if we're going from experimenting to deploying it, we also need to make sure that we've got, the organizational processes, rules, and regulations that are keeping up with it. Because if you keep it too loose, you're going to lose some of that information in different environments as well. And then there's also the one key point. I don't know if anybody is on Instagram, but Reese Witherspoon posted about AI and women and the education around it. And then I went into a bit of a rabbit hole, and there's also some sabotaging that's happening within organizations around AI. So before we go into our next article, I just wanted to mention those two things because I think they're important to note as we go from experimenting to deploying and how we're actually bringing the team along. Anyways, all right, let's get to our next article. Now, this is one that you wrote, and we wanted to highlight it because it talks about all sorts of really great things that everybody needs to know around planning, but the actual reality in the yard. A lot of times we think that everything's executing at plan and there are no gaps, and we're going to employ this technology and everything's going to be great. But what you say is that plan and execution are two different things, and there's a big gap between the two of those. What I thought was really interesting was something that I mentioned on a show just a little while ago, is about data isn't keeping up with decisions. And that's part of what you say, you talk about in this article. So highly recommend you go and check it out. But Ilhan, talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we've been very passionate about. We see the yard as a last frontier in the supply chain visibility because like there's been great improvements in transport data capture and processing, like the Project 44 scorecards off the world, like inside the warehouse, there has been, since the late 90s, the warehouse management systems that are ERPs and TMS type solutions coming in. Now in the latest generation, we have robotics, variable technology, assisted human in the loop solutions that has been really evolving and improving the warehouse inside the capabilities inside the warehouse. The yard isn't right between them, right? And we feel that has been neglected, has been deprioritized because it's the most complex one out there. And the complexity comes from the difficulty in collecting, capturing all the signals. And for instance, a problem like a dwell time it's not a throughput problem. It is more of a visibility problem driven by delayed or incomplete signals. These signals could happen at the gate, not properly capturing the inbound, outbound traffic. Again, as I mentioned, from a visibility perspective, your yard inventory, if you don't know where things are at in a given time, and think about like food and bev type use cases where you have refrigerated units that would need hosing, you would need to have visibility across this complex workflows that are happening in your yard. And these are dynamic places. Things are happening at all times. So it is very difficult for human eyes and minds to stay on track with these. So when you look at the YMS, TMS, ERPs that are out there, these are great solutions. And we always believe like Everywhere 360 works better when when our customers have these kind of solutions, because we see ourselves as the vitamin, the nutrient that would enhance your already made investment in these kind of system of records. So you could do all the planning in these systems, but when it comes to execution, you would need products like ours, where it would give you the reality, the visibility on what's happening at your yard at a given time, starting at the gate, then the full cycle of these assets within the yard, so that you don't have decision latency, so you don't make decisions on stale or incomplete data. So visibility and timing are the biggest gaps. This is what we wanted to highlight in this article.
Well, and I think that I want to point out one more thing. And if you're on my personal LinkedIn, just know we're going to add the links to the articles after the show. So stay tuned for that. You say that YMS doesn't solve the problem completely. And I want to ask you why. One of the reasons that you note in this article is the data confidence. And I think this is a real thing. I mean, if we see the 55% poll results, that they're fixing bad information on a consistent basis, and that's what holds them back within operations. This is a real challenge. So why do you say that data confidence is one of the reasons why it doesn't solve the problem completely?
Yeah, and to clarify again, like I think there's great YMS out there. We love working with them, and we've partnered with several of them as well too. In that sense, they are great to execute your workflows. They're great to have your plan, have your data in there. But when the real-time data inputs are lagging or lack the accuracy, right? Like we're talking about a lot of alphanumerics on a lot of assets that are just sitting out there in the physical world. And yards are oddly shaped. It's not always, fine-tuned to easily collect data at. Even when our AI models, sometimes it takes 3-4 weeks to train our models to fully get that accuracy levels to the levels that we want them to be. So it is just very complex and very difficult to capture the data so that your YMS could execute on it properly. I think the workflows on several of these systems are almost perfect. They've been building out these solutions for a while, but without the data, they cannot turn that data into proper information to execute and run your operations properly.
Yeah, it's the trust and the confidence too. You want to make sure that your team has that. Now, I want to just remind everybody, snap that QR code because that's going to take you to the yard visibility snapshot where you can do a quick assessment that shows you where you are within your yard journey. I also want to give a shout out over on the Let's Talk Supply Chain Instagram. Mystical Anna's gave us a fire emoji. That's our second fire emoji for the show. And on my personal IG, I want to say hi to Ravinder as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, we have one more article, and I promised you that we were going to talk about bourbon. And you're probably wondering, what does bourbon have to do with supply chain? Ilhan's like, it might be in my coffee right now. Just kidding.
Just coffee.
So I saw this article, and what intrigued me the most, and I was talking to a VP of supply chain the other day who loves a good old fashioned. So we were talking about bourbon, and I sort of went on a little bit of a rabbit hole on this one too. And I found this article, and it says aging bourbon on the high seas are at full volume. What they're doing is they're sending barrels of bourbon to be on a ship. And I have questions about the ship. I don't know if it's that motorboat that you're seeing. I don't know if it's a sailboat. I don't know if it's a container ship. I mean, I have questions, but it says that they're sending barrels of bourbon on a ship for 6 to 8 months. And what they're trying to do is expose the bourbon to a variety of different things: motion, temperature fluctuations. And this isn't the only thing that they're doing. Ilhan, what did you think of this particular article?
Well, I had no idea. So thanks for bringing this to my attention. I really appreciate it. As a bourbon drinker, it's good to know that these product makers have the utmost attention in perfecting their products, minding the conditions. I think there are lessons for us in the industry. Like, it's about like being aware of your conditions and how you can control and understand these conditions the best way possible. I immediately resorted to thinking how the operators that we talk to, and the higher they are aware, the higher their awareness around the conditions they operate in, the more successful they are running their yards and operations. So these kind of small inputs can definitely drive big outputs. So it's very interesting to read this article.
Such a huge lesson. I love that you brought it back to that, because I always look at different industries to see what can we bring back to supply chain? What can we learn? What does that look like? Justin says, is there bourbon in that cup? I just want to make sure that Ilhan has already said it's only coffee, people. Okay. It's only coffee. Some of the other things that they talked about was that they're putting barrels of bourbon and they're playing Metallica at a low volume so that the bourbon, takes in, I guess, the low vibrations. They're also putting bourbon 65 feet below sea level. And they're putting the bourbon in areas where it's sub-zero temperatures as well. So this kind of experimentation, if we think about AI coming into supply chain, I think this is a really, really good lesson in we need to get creative. We need to get back to play, especially with AI. And I don't know if you've spent a lot of time playing around with it and just seeing where it takes you and how far you can push back and which questions that you can ask. But this takes us back to how creative we can be as supply chain professionals and how we can make a bigger impact on the industry, I think. Ilhan, what are your final words for the audience? What do you want them to take away from this conversation with?
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure, as always, talking to you, Sarah. Again, a lot of great things are happening in our industry. Again, the conditions are a little tough, a little uneven, but we've been there before. We've done these kind of difficult things. As Avira 360, we're ready to support all the operators that like to remove decision latency, help with their processes in the best way possible. So check us out. We're a very interesting, unique company that is trying to solve a very complex problem in the industry. We're proud of ourselves and the product offering that we have. So looking forward to connecting with you again.
Awesome. I love that. Well, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in, gave us fire emojis. I love to see it. Now, next week, DC is going to be here in the hot seat, and she's going to be hosting a conversation leading up to the National Supply Chain Day Gala, and I cannot wait for that particular episode. So make sure you come back next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. And yeah, thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next